You, Nikki.
Okay, good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world. We've still got a couple of people joining us, but I'm just aware that we've got quite a packed session here, so I'm going to start and hopefully they can just keep filtering in. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Ellie. I am the CSC Marketing and Comms Officer. I've been behind the scenes for all the sessions so far this week. So I recognise quite a few names on this call, which is great to see so many of you joining us again. And it's actually quite nice to be able to speak to you this time. We've heard from so many organisations this week who have been running amazing initiatives to improve the lives of children in street situations. But we also know that a critical organisational barrier to implementing these is funding, which is why we wanted to put this session on as part of our final day of this year's forum. Hopefully to give you some advice on ensuring that the great ideas that maybe you come away with this week can be turned into tangible projects that funders want to be a part of. So before I begin, I'd just like to run through some very quick housekeeping slides, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with by now. So just to let you know, this is an interactive session. There'll be plenty of opportunity for questions and discussions, but as you have been doing throughout the week, please do feel free to use the chat box to discuss any themes that come up, any ideas that you might have yourself, just to keep the conversation moving. And also please feel free to use the chat box to introduce yourselves, as a few of you are doing already, which is great. We've been using the hashtag CSC Network Forum 2022 for any of our social media posts, and it'd be great if you do tweet or post about the forum at all. If you could use the hashtag just so that we could see it, that would be wonderful. And finally, just to let you know that this session is being recorded. Breakout rooms, we'll have a few breakout rooms. They won't be recorded, but the main presentations will be. If you aren't comfortable with that, then you can turn your camera off, just use the chat box or anything else. You can always just leave the session and we can share the recording with you next week. So I'm going to dive right in, and I'd like to introduce you to our amazing speaker for this session, Bill Bruty. Bill is the Director of Fundraising Training Ltd and is recognised as a global expert in successful grant seeking from trusts, governments, companies and wealthy individuals. Bill's worked as a professional fundraiser for some of the UK's large national charities for almost 40 years. So I can't think of anyone better placed than Bill to talk us through how to write a winning fundraising application. Thank you.
My goodness, Eleanor, thank you so much indeed. No pressure there. So yeah, just to compliment a little bit of the introduction there. I'm Bill Bruty. I've been in this game now for 40 years, and my real specialism is organisations where high value fundraising grants is a big part of their income. So we work across the world with organisations that are either grant dependent or trying to evolve out of grants and diversify their portfolio. So that's our particular expertise. So we both work with fund-seeking civil society, but also with funders as well. So there's two particular funders that some of you might well have come across. One is Portico, who are based in Amsterdam but operate globally. We've worked with Porticus for something like 15 years now, helping their grant holders become sustainable. Another foundation called the Siegel Family Foundation, who are based in New Jersey, but all of their decision making comes out of the Nairobi office. And we've worked with them for about 5 years, helping the African Visionary Fellowship become more sustainable. So I'm looking at this from two sides: how to get the money, but also from the perspective of people who are giving out the money as well. But before we get underway, I need to get a little bit of a sense of where we all are with this particular challenge. So I'm just going to share my screen and pose a question to you all. Are you all seeing a series of blue images? Yep, we've got that. So right, I'm going to pose a question now, and the question is, imagine the scenario that you have got 4 days to research and develop a funding proposal, and then it's got to be in, and it's got to be in by that deadline, and you are after that money with hundreds of other organizations. What I'm interested in now about how confident and how do you feel at the moment? So if you can pick the image which most represents where you stand and put the number into the chat. So if you're really positive about this and saying, bring it on, I love doing this stuff, you can pick image number 1 and put number 1 into the chat. If you're terrified, you can pick image number 3 and put that into the chat. So all we did is pick the image and the number associated, and just very quickly in the chat, just put the number that most represents how you feel. 5 is even-handed, 2 is curious in a negative way, and 4 is curious in a kind of positive way. So off we go, folks. Let's see. Eleanor, I don't know if you're able to keep a little tag on the chat. I'm going to have a look at it as well, just see what numbers are coming up.
Yeah, I'll keep an eye.
Oh, we've got a 1. Got 1 I can see. Oh, a couple of 1s. Oh, well, yeah, a few 1s coming in. Wow, I think we've got a lot, haven't we? Okay, let's end the voting. Ellie, just from looking at it, it looks like a lot of 4s, doesn't it? We've got a few 3s in there. So
yeah,
I'm going to dive onto someone who's a 3. So someone who gave a 3, can you give us a little bit of a personal confession as to why you chose that particular image? And do demute yourself and speak through it. Is anybody coming forward before I pick a 3?
Yes. Okay. So I chose a 3 because, to be honest, I find proposal writing very stressful, and a lot of now that you find that the donors are changing the way the questions are being asked. So if I had to write a proposal in 4 days, to me that's really very, very stressful, because putting it together isn't easy.
So the stressful bit is about trying to understand what on earth the funders want to know. I always think one of the things in this world is a kind of international English that is in these proposals. It's not everyone's first language. So those sort of things that make it stressful for you.
And the terminology that's used, so you're not sure, okay, so what exactly are they asking? I think that's really it. And then the time frame, and then having to do a budget to go with it as well, and hoping you don't forget anything.
It does sound a gruesome thing to do, doesn't it? So let's go across to someone who picked a 1 and hear a different perspective. So anyone who put 1, please lean forward and let's have a different perspective. Anyone coming forward, Eddie? I can't see on my screen. I might well plunge.
Well, I said 1, so basically I've done this for too long, so I kind of am passionate whenever I see opportunities, and I'll just go for it if I'm given for a week. So.
And you've got that passion. You've done a lot of it. So Barakat, can you sprinkle a little bit of your dust?
Yeah.
So what makes you so passionate and confident about it?
So the thing is, I'm quite familiar with all the questions asked, what they're looking for, and their point of view as well, and also what would be the good elements the proposal should have. So, and at the same time also, if you understand your organization really well, and then what you do really well, once you get it, then it will become more straightforward. So it's
So it's a bit like the more you do it, the more confident you become,
yes.
The more you know the language, and it feels less daunting.
Yeah.
There we are, Amina. That's the solution. Just have to do more of it. Anybody else would like to add something in that can give give people a kind of more positive perspective and maybe a shortcut to doing more of it and having that passion for your cause.
So we've got a comment from Sotar in the chat, who chose number 4, who said that thinks it's an opportunity and tickles him to think how it would work and how he can access it.
Oh, okay. So it's that kind of professional curiosity. Yeah, I totally get that. I'm still part of it. I mean, I've been doing this game for nearly 40 years. And if I encounter a new funder with a different form and a different perspective, I see it as an intellectual challenge to shoehorn the information I've got into their way of doing things. Right, let's get underway. What we're going to do today is I'm going to reveal to you that all of the application forms that you're likely to encounter are actually based upon a common template. So Amina's point about, oh, I have to learn the terms, I have to learn the languages. What I'm going to do is drill down under all those terms and come up with a common template that is portable across nearly every application form you're going to encounter. And what I'm going to suggest is if we understand this basic template and you gather the information that's required, you have the raw material for virtually every application form you're ever going to encounter. The second thing I'm going to suggest that because there is such continuity in these questions, that if the funder doesn't have an application form, imagine they are asking you these questions. So we're going to look at that. And then the final little bit is a little twist, is we're going to look at how you can condense your words. Because that's such a common thing now. You've got to compress your whole organizational heritage, achievements, and the issue you're dealing with into 250 words. So we're going to look at a writing technique that helps you to compress your words. And hopefully with these two things, I can try and move up the dial so you're scoring a bit more confidently. Right, did everybody get an email before joining which had 3 attachments to it? We might want to stick with the chat to make sure everyone's got them. Attachment number 1, one of the attachments is going to be a proposal, which is a 3 or 4 page document, which is a mashup, a fabricated proposal based on one of our clients' work. We've then got what we're calling a scoring system, and that's what I'm going to concentrate on in a minute. And then the third bit is we've got a little bit of an extract. So we've got a paragraph which is 97 words, which at the end of the session, we're going to have an enjoyable time to compress into as few words as we possibly can. So that's going to be our game. I'm very flexible with how we do this. So it's going to be a combination of presentation, discussion, work in breakout rooms. So, but I'm very open, and it's those of you who are here at the start with Nikki, who's been on a number of our courses, I'm kind of under pressure to reveal something new. So I'm more than happy for you to take some opportunities within this to quiz me. You know, someone who's been at this game for 40 years, maybe I can answer some of the questions which have been burning in your soul for several months or several years. Right, let's start off with the first big idea. This comes from a bit of intellectual curiosity. I spend my life grappling with funder application forms. It's kind of what I do. And like everybody here, probably I've spent the time absolutely curious as to why funders have such different application forms. And then I kind of put the question to myself, well, are these application forms as different as I think they are? So what I did was I gathered together 100 application forms. That's a bit tragic. Other people collect stamps, some people collect fridge magnets, I collected application forms. And to go even worse, I got really old school about them. And I printed out 100 application forms. I then sat down and cut out each question so that it was a separate slither of paper. So you can imagine how many questions I had on slithers of paper from 100 application forms. And they were literally just like slips sitting on my kitchen table. And what I did was I started to organize them into piles. So I was saying, is that question a bit like this question? So I was trying to group them. So from hundreds of questions, what we found was that every single question could have been put in one of 15 piles of paper. So this is my underpinning template that if we can post, is it 15 or 14? 14 piles of paper. So what I'm going to now reveal to you are the 14 questions that underpin all of these forms. I will have to put a health check on it because this study was done several years ago, and now it probably needs a refresh because the environment is changing. So what I'm going to reveal to you now are the 14 questions that that funders ask on every application form. What we're then going to do afterwards is have an opportunity to clarify the meaning of the questions. And then we're going to have an exercise where you play funder in pairs and score the Women of Africa application. And I'll explain how we're going to run that when we get a bit closer. But let's start off with our questions. Number one, is this what we're getting up at the moment? You're getting the blank screen with one on it.
No, we can see all 14.
Oh, no, that's is that better?
Yes.
Oh, phew. I've been innocently sitting there believing I could do a disguise and reveal, and I've spilled it out in front of you. Anyway, let's go back to, so question number one. I want to know how many people will benefit. The vast majority of boards for grant makers are amateur philanthropists. They might have professionals advising them, but at the end of the day, the people sitting around the committee table are amateurs. And the one thing amateurs really understand is numbers. They may not have the faintest clue about good practice in encouraging a journey for people, street connected children, but they can spot numbers. And they can spot inconsistency in numbers. So you have to feed them a number. So I want to know how many people will benefit. I also want to know what are their specific needs. So is it about educational achievement? Is it about addressing discrimination? Is it about health? So what's the particular need of your beneficiaries? So the first part of the questions are all about the problem. So quantity and quality. So what is the qualitative aspect of the problem? The second part of the application form is about you as an organization. So what I want to know is, what are your overall aims? And then what I also want to know is, how do you engage your service users? So I want to have a sense of how you reflect the people you work with. Is this all okay so far? I mean, there aren't really any surprises here because you folks have been dealing with application forms like Bereket for years. So it's not surprising that, you know, this core consistency will be familiar. Fifth question is, you don't operate in a bubble. So how does your work connect with that of other organizations? So government actors, other civil society organizations. Yeah, how do you not duplicate? How do you complement? That's question 5. Question 6 is the only question that changes with each funder. So question 6 is, how is this relevant to our policies, which they might declare or they might not declare. All of the other 14 questions, they will be standard for different funders, but this one is obviously going to be different depending on the nature of the funder. All okay so far? You are going to become grant makers in about 7 minutes. So if you're uncomfortable with playing deity and scoring someone, then please stop and ask me for clarification. Right, now, after we've done the kind of prelude bit, so you'll probably see the first 2 questions are about the need, 3 and 4 about you as an organization, and then 5 and 6 are about the external relevance of the project. So how does it fit into other work, and how does it fit into our programming as a funder? Questions 7 onwards are about the actual delivery of the project. So what are you hoping to achieve? What are the aims or the outcomes? And if we're being more disciplined, it's about impact and outcomes, but funders don't universally use those terms. So I put it, what we really want to know is actually, what do you hope to achieve? What change do you hope to achieve? Number 8 is how will you deliver that? So within a results-based framework, that would be what are the outputs and what are the activities? And number 9 is about timescale. So when does it need to, when do you anticipate it starting? How long will it last for? Number 10 is the financial question, is how much do you need to run this project? So what's the budget? Number 11 is about monitoring. So how will you know this project is going to achieve number 7? So it's about your monitoring processes. Number 12 is about how you will evaluate the project. So having taken the temperature of the project, what processes do you have in place to review, manage, adjust the project? Number 13 is basically, I as a funder, I'm only going to fund this for 3 years, maybe less, maybe more, but I'm not going to fund it forever. So convince me it won't fall apart when my funding ends. So that's about the long run sustainability of the project. But some of the propositions you have are not ongoing. So in that sense, the financial sustainability of it is not so much of a question. So it could be about a report production, could be about acquisition of a building, but it's a one-off. In that case, they will want to know, how will other people learn about it? And in fact, some funders ask both 13 and 14, and they're saying, how will it be funded in the long run, and how will other people learn about it? And that's the 14. And I've been really disciplined here because I stuck to 14 that were consistent. There were many questions that were common, but not universal. Whereas these were universal. Unfortunately, you never find an application form that's in this order either. The reason why we put it in this order is because if you look at it, it follows the chronology of project design. So 1, 2 are about the problem. That's about the design phase. 3 and 4 are about why you. 4 and 5 are about the external context. That's all about project design. 7, 8, 9, 10 are about project implementation. And then with the monitoring and evaluation and 12 and then 12, 13, 14, you're into the future of the project. So this is interestingly quite a good format for project stipulation. And one of my light bulb moments for finding my 14 piles was a reference to a business management checklist of a well-designed project, which I used to lecture on when I worked at the Open University Business School. So what's really interesting here is the questions that funders ask are very much overlapped with good project design. So there endeth the lecture, the sermon on what funders are looking for. We are going to break into some breakout rooms shortly, going to be in pairs, and we're going to ask you to use the scoring framework you've got, which represents these questions. And there might actually be, depending which one I might have sent, there might be a 15th question, which is about which partners you're working for, which is a sub-question of number 5. So it's not only about which organizations, but which organizations you're directly in partnership with. But it's essentially, it's the same framework. So so we're going to ask you to score that. So read it and score it. So any questions about the meanings of these terms? Anything unclear? Barakat.
I just want to, like, I don't know, maybe you can explain in terms when you talk about beneficiary, often there is they ask about direct and indirect, and in terms of the terminology, project aim and outcome, it's kind of, it could also be the same as impact and objective. I think it's the same kind of terminologies with the same thing, but they use a different kind of language. In terms of monitoring evaluation, it's also more about learning and how you can actually disseminate that or scale up that. I mean, it's just general question as well, you know, match funding, you know, is there as a like funders supporting this project. I just want to highlight these things, and also the key things, also the sustainability part, is that could be economically or environmentally. Sustainability would be also something which comes up a lot.
Yeah. I mean, I think all those points are very valid. I think the terminology in number 12 would be now much more about monitoring and evaluation and learning. Yeah, I do accept that. One thing I would say is, again, we were trying to use universal terms from the funders rather than common terms, and evaluation on its own was a universal. I think the thing about number 7, which is the aims outcomes, that is a way of compressing impact and outcomes. So that's what is your project going to change. And so there's an overlap with results-based management terminology there. Number 13 is essentially the sustainability question. So will it stand up once I walk away? And for many funders, that is a deal breaker. Why would they put money into something if it's going to fall apart when their money's taken away? Any other questions, folks, before we get into breakout rooms?
Yeah, Bill,
Yes.
I've got one. Sorry.
Okay, Nikki.
Yeah, it's just the use of language we're talking here, because obviously we're very much pushing away from using the word beneficiaries, it's participants, it's that sort of language that, you know, Bond and others are rightly pushing us towards. But obviously we want to build relationships with these funders. You know, this is as much relational fundraising as it is filling in an application form. So the your opinion, you know, I tend to stick with what the words that are on the application form, or the words that's on their website, try and do it in their voice and not our own, but very careful that we're not doing anything that's, you know, obviously going to be seen or construed as yeah, you know, sort of yeah, the wrong terminology. You've got to be so careful, haven't you, nowadays? I just wondered your comment on that.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of comments on this. I mean, the language we've got in here is reflecting the language of the funders, and funders are on a different spectrum in terms of their terminology. So I mean, it might be a very valid point for us to change that into better terminology. It's essentially talking about the same group of people. So yeah, our terminology is reflective of funders, and the more progressive funders obviously are using very different terminology now, and you've got to get that right. The other thing is, I think we've got to have a little thing about the change in the landscape between the metric-based funders who assess you and score you, which is what we're looking at here, and then trust-based funders who don't use this type of appraisal. And I think we do have a distinct difference in the world between this type of metric funder and the emerging trust-based funders. And I think particularly the way that Mackenzie Scott has given out her philanthropy over the last year or so is very much leading that scale and drive towards trust-based philanthropy. these people don't have application forms, and they're looking for different things from you. So I think that is a really important distinction here, is trust-based philanthropy looks for different things than this kind of mechanistic approach to good project design. And yeah, trust-based philanthropy, particularly coming out of the US, is more the growing end of philanthropy at the moment. So that would be for me one of my big things is, am I dealing with a metric funder or am I dealing with a trust-based funder? Because the way they assess you is going to be very different. Any other questions?
Yes, mine is the number 6. What is the relevance of the project to our policies? I don't really understand that question.
That's a funder question. So it's saying we have policies. So how are you relevant to us? So that's the one that does change. So each different funder will have its own policies, programs, either openly declared or not. And ironically, that is probably the first question they look at. So if you can't show to them how it's relevant to them, they won't read the rest of it. So it's not about your policies, it's about their policies. Does that help explain it, Amina?
Yes, yes, I'm very clear now. Thank you.
I'm going to count down 5. When I get to 1, no more questions. So 5. If you can keep scanning for me, Ellie, I've got half a screen. 5, 4. Oh, Pia's in. I think you're muted, Pia.
Apologies, I just saw an interesting question in the chat, which was Jenny just clarifying, by metric, do you mean corporate? And I think by metric, you mean people who want you to show numbers and results and, you know, so just, I think good to clarify for Jenny.
Yeah, I would call a metric-based funder whose one is using this sort of numerical or qualitative assessment framework. And they're looking for clear outcomes. They're looking for these types of measurements. Whereas a trust-based funder will probably invest in you and your strategy and give you what is largely strategic or unrestricted money. Whereas in this particular funder, they're really kind of looking at the management of their money by you.
And maybe just to add, Jenny, that from my perspective, I think where I've seen the real extreme on the metrics-based is with performance-based results. So there's some funders who've gone the other direction from the trust-based who say we will only pay you if you deliver, I don't know, you get, for every child you get on the street, you get into a school, we'll pay you an X premium, would be a kind of extreme version of metrics-based funding.
Yeah, and they are 2 schools. People like SoGive and GiveWell, which are donor advisory funds or donor advisory bodies. They're very, very metric driven.
We've had a question from Kelvin, who is asking if he can explain number 11 in a little more detail.
Yeah, that's really about your monitoring processes. So if you've stated we hope to achieve this aim, this outcome, how will you know that? So yeah, it's about how you're taking the temperature of project, what sort of processes you're using. Are you doing a statistical tracking? Are you doing most significant journey? What's your monitoring process? Can I count down? So 4, 3, 2, 1, bang. Right, Ellie, can we put everyone into we're not yet. So we'll hold them back for a bit. What you've got is you've got the Women of Africa mashup. I think it's about 4 pages. You've got a scoring framework. And in your pairs, give them a free point for what is essentially number 6. So imagine they are relevant to you as a funder. So that's not in the scoring system. What I'd like you to do in your pairs is read that proposal and come to an agreed scoring in 15 minutes time, which sounds horrifically quick, but it's quite a deliberate exercise to give you a sense of how quickly people need to absorb your information. So 15 minutes, read and score, and then we'll see what we've learned from this exercise. Welcome back, everyone. Too short. I get a lot of shaking of heads. Actually, Paul, Paul Sundar, I'll plunge. You were shaking your head there. What was it that you felt? Oh my goodness me! I haven't got time. It's too short. Was that your experience?
Yeah. You want me to just share what I feel?
Well, at this stage, what I'd be interested in is this is actually in some ways a very realistic example of how funders have to deal with it. They haven't got all day to read your proposals.
Yeah, exactly.
You've got 4 days to write them. They've got 15 minutes to read them. So how did that feel?
No, it was. It's very quick. We couldn't complete even the reading because one of our colleagues joined it late. So we were trying to help her out to read it, and by the time we went into the second number and started reading the assessments, time was over. So we had to come back to this room.
So it's kind of
just started reading.
Have you learned anything from the exercise?
Yeah, I think we were able to we should quickly read it. So we were trying to grasp what was inside. We just understood that about the proposal about 20 organizations going to get leadership development and grant making and all that. And the outcomes of the 5 outcomes which was narrated there. We're just trying to give some scoring and then understanding whatever we have understood in that 15 minutes. It's not so easy. It's very difficult. So whatever was staying in my mind, with that, I'll have to give my scoring. I may not be perfect under 100% of all the 4 pages, I think, may not be remaining in my head.
Isn't it frustrating? You put all that hard work in, and this is kind of real, and they're going to give you 15 minutes. 15 distracted minutes. And somehow it's got to work. Nikki, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I suppose we could have stopped straight away after we'd read it. So Angus and I were looking at this. I read it through quickly because he didn't have the paperwork up, and then he found it. So I was reading at speed. But we realised the very first thing is I don't think it mentioned the funders' policies anywhere. And therefore we could have just stopped then. We didn't. We then went and answered all the other questions very quickly. But that first line it didn't mention the policies at all.
Well, to be fair, in the exercise, I was kind of assuming you would take that as a given, that it's relevant.
But it wasn't though, Bill. It wasn't.
So again,
we are detailed people, Bill. We are detailed people.
You're accurate and detailed. I suppose from that, your learning would be, the first thing, the easiest, and the first thing they've got to read is why it's relevant to them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, before you even start, if I had 4 days to look at this, the first thing I'll do is be absolutely clear that we match really well. Otherwise, I wouldn't be wasting my time doing it. There are too many others you could go for. So, I mean, I think that's crucial to be sure that every part of your organization fits there. You read everything and then find that you bring in too little money or too much money. That's often a killer, and, all sides of it. But then we did go through, but very quickly touching on all the other bits. And we literally got to the number 13 when we were shoved back in. I'm not sure I gave Angus any chance to speak very much. There is that as well. But he was nodding a lot. I hope that's accurate, Angus.
The reaction so far is you realise that for all your hard work, it has to be digestible in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
You realise that you've got to enable them to find why they should read it, and find it and go for it, and then they'll read on.
Absolutely.
Any other learnings from that exercise? Because it's kind of, we can score a slightly made up application, or we can kind of look at this and go, what do I learn from this for my next application? So anything else that's come from that experience of being on the other side in this way? Here, I can see you leaning forward and a finger flicking. Is that?
No, my finger's flicking at Amara, who's got his hand up.
Oh, okay, brilliant. Amara?
Yeah, thank you. I think the experience is really good, especially one thing I captured here is time management, because even when funders give you the opportunity to write for a proposal, they have a closure date, and you understanding what is required is also very much important, because being able to understand, then you'll be able to know what you are about to target. And also, as we are walking through the score sheet, we found out that the aspect of dates was missing, and there was nowhere in it that it tells the funder that, okay, this program or this project will start this date to this date. And it's very much important because it's a circle. So you must be able to know when you are going to start and when you are going to end, because that helps you to at least tailor or break down your activities well and within budget as well. And also it trickles down in me like you need a team member in terms of writing the proposal. If you've done the writing, then you need someone to at least do a proofreading for you, to at least there are certain things that you need to pick up that you might not be able to at least get any knowledge of whilst you are writing, because you might be in haste. But if you have someone with a cool head, at least compared to that of yours, then there are some things that will be picked up in your proposals that will be very much beneficial in you gaining a grant. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. I mean, just on that thing about peer review, what we found with this checklist is this is a very good tool for peer review. So instead of asking someone to just reread it, get them to be familiar with this scoring system and score it for you. And then you'll find some of the shortcomings before the funder finds them and chucks you out as well. And yeah, it's it's quite a cold-blooded, tough old game. This. Any other lessons you take away? Because I'm intrigued to see how this might change your practice. Anything appearing in the chat? So do put something in the chat if you want to, in terms of this.
Yeah, can I speak?
Yeah, Amara, you come back again. Yeah.
Yeah, and also when on the checklist, monitoring, you don't just need to tell the donor that you are going to monitor the process. You need to show the methods, your tools that you are going to use that will at least enhance you to be able to track the different indicators or objectives accordingly to show the impact. But on the checklist, on the grant or on the literature, they just told that they will do monitoring. There's a frame, but how? Does the donor need to know? Yes, the donor needs to know that, okay, we'll be using focus group discussions. We'll be using pre or post test. We'll be using different strategies. So the donor will be detailed in terms of understanding how you will be monitoring the project to gain its success or desired objective.
Can I want to celebrate that, because someone who reads a lot of applications, one of the monitoring and evaluation answer is often so generic that you could click it out of one piece of work and put it into a totally different organization. And it so frustrates funders because there's no tangibility and particular about the way you monitor. And I think particularly when it comes to monitoring, the processes might be similar, but what are you monitoring? And each thing in each situation, you will be looking for different things. So you need to give the reader that real tangibility of that particular thing about yourself. What else? There's a good point here about risk. I'm very close to redoing this study again, because what I did, it started many14 ago, and I'm putting new applications as I find them into the same system. And it's big. This 14 questions are beginning to creak a bit, because I think there's some other questions that are coming up that will qualify now. And the question about risk is one that I'm seeing. So risk and environmental sustainability, I think, are going to be coming on to. So watch this space. We'll do the study again in a year or so, and I think we will have a slightly different checklist.
Bill, do
Yeah.
you think COVID would be in there to how you're working through, or what's the impact of it, or what impact has it had? Is that going to be included in the mix, do you think, for going forward? I know at the moment still is, but because obviously it's in our country, our donors, assuming that they're UK donors, then it's not quite up on their list anymore. So it's about, but of course internationally it's massively still on ours. And particularly children on the street.
We did a very in-depth study in the UK Foundation reaction to COVID and what the reality of it was, which is very different from what people perceived. I mean, I think the impact of the external environment, which is that question, I think it's question 5, and the other actors, is a very important question. Yeah. So you can read that as about what are other people doing, but I think you can also read it as what's going on in the enabling environment around you.
External environmental, yes, yeah.
In many contexts, COVID is still a very relevant factor to the external.
Yeah. Thank you.
Equally, I think, you know, climate justice is probably rising as a far more significant factor now. Gosh, what have we got? So gender, yeah, I hear Amina's point about gender. Again, gender is, but it's a common but not a universal. And what I'm nervous about doing is creating a checklist that's 20 questions, because it then loses its value of being a succinct core. But yeah, I do hear the point about gender, very much so, gender and climate justice. Any other takeaways from this? Any no-nos? Was there anything you saw in the application you thought, oh, I'd never, I wouldn't do that? Is there any red flags that came up to people? Paul?
The proposal that we read is no more possible in India. You know, it's a kind of funding request for a network of NGOs, which is not possible if it is a source of funding from external funders. So in India, there's a restriction that an organization cannot receive funds and distribute it from foreign donors. So that's not possible anymore in India.
Okay, so that's a particular context of that. Anything stylistically, anything about the way things were phrased or content that people found jarring, difficult to deal with? Right, okay, Nikki again.
Sorry, I mean, shut me up, obviously, but no, I just felt it lacked passion. I mean, okay, it didn't reach their policy, so it doesn't feel like they were trying to connect the two passions, again, the relational stuff, to which might have come out if they had talked about the policies and the sort of the aims of both organizations. So I found it quite a hard read, in as much as it's got all the information in there, but I would wanted to have seen that softened so much more, because you've got somebody reading this, they're reading the same information. What is it that makes this stand out and makes you an organization that they, you know, where is that passion and shared desire for change? So I just thought, yeah, I thought it had lots of information, it lacked some of it, but certainly the language, and I think it was jarring on too much on developmental language. It's, you know, we're talking to donors, we're talking to, you know, normal people who might not be in the, you know, not in programs. They just want to know where their money's going to go and what a difference it's going to make. So I just felt that it just lacked that side of things.
Yeah, the kind of human context.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Because you've got to appeal to their hearts as well as their heads. And their pockets, obviously. Right,
we're going to take a little bit of a shift now for the final bit and move on to a little bit of a different question. Bereket, I see you have your hand up.
Just one thing, I mean, I don't know if you observed, I think for a few years, the team of innovation is coming really strong, you know, because charities have been doing the same thing repeatedly. And then so there's a big question every time I see is that innovation, what's special about it? Are you coming with new way of working? Are you using technology? Something that could be amplified or something could kind of transformational is really coming strong. I think, so I don't know whether how you can capture within those checklists is innovation.
Well, I think it does vary along the funding chain. So there are funders who are into innovation, and then there are funders who are interested in scale and consolidation, and they're looking for something that's a bit more tried and tested. So I think it is quite important to get a spectrum. Jenny, I will take the question and we move on to the next exercise.
Sorry, I just wondered why in the checklist, there's nothing about the history or why you're providing the services or what you're doing. Because is that not quite important if it's quite a personal thing?
Interesting, because
do you need to know that, or is it just irrelevant?
It wasn't a question that came up universally. I mean, what they wanted to know was universally, what are your aims?
Yeah.
How do you engage and represent your clients and service users? And then how are you different from other people? So in a way, your evolution is explained in those three questions.
So you still put in like why you're, better at giving out that service or whatever than someone else maybe, or?
Yeah, I mean, across those three questions, you should be able to deliver your differential.
Okay.
Right, one thing. One of the big challenges is your wonderful 4-day, 14-page proposal, which is read by the gatekeeper, is highly unlikely to ever reach the final decision makers. So the final decision makers always tend to receive a summary of your proposal. So one of the real key skills about effective proposal writing is the ability to feed the reader an easy summary. I've seen it so many times with people that I work with as funders. They say, this is a great idea. I haven't got the time to summarize. It's too complex. So being able to write directly and succinctly, so you're feeding a summary, is a really, really important skill. So always be bearing in mind to that is that you are persuading someone to take you to the next stage, but you should also be equipping them to rewrite your proposal in their own terms. So what we're now going to look at is how to write with brevity and with power. And I'm going to share my screen to introduce this idea. Are you all seeing a chicken and an egg?
Yes.
Great, perfect, right, wonderful. A time-honored image. What we're going to look at here is the difference between active voice and passive voice. So I'm going to quickly just put the first thing. The egg was laid by the chicken. Is that an active statement or a passive statement?
Passive.
Passive. And Mina, your reason for thinking it's passive?
Because it's being written about the chicken. This is what the chicken did. Can't really explain.
So I mean, it's interesting. It's taking the action of the chicken, the egg, and putting it in front of the chicken. So this is, you're absolutely right, this is a passive phrase. The more common way we often see this one is the egg was laid by the chicken. This is our active description. The chicken laid the egg. Now, not when you make an active statement, which puts you as the actor producing something, and you first with the action as a result of it, normally it uses less words. And what you see a lot in our proposals, and this is as to whether it's a sentence or a paragraph, is we lead the reader to what we actually want to say. So we take them up to an intellectual garden path, and then at the end of it say, and we want to do this, or we will do this, or we have done that. So I think what we've got to do in our writing is be very clear about who we are. We're the chicken, and what are we doing? And then we've got to put that at the very start of our writing. So let's have a quick look at the statement, which I've given to you already. You should have this in the pack. Actually, I'm struggling. Ellie, have that the thing which is the narrative, the extract, have you got that to handy? Because I'm struggling to find it on my system.
Are you trying to share it?
Yeah, could you share it? Yeah. Here we are. Right, here we've got a 97-word extract from the proposal you read. There's an end product here. There's a chicken and it's laying an egg. Let's have a little read. And what do we believe is the key statement within this paragraph? Line 3. To this, so that's mission is to mobilize financial material resources to support African women and the work of the African. It's lengthy, isn't it?
Sorry, not sure what happened there.
Any other calls on what might be the key product of this paragraph?
I would say like we will like empower women. If we say that statement, rather than say we believe that if women organization empower, it says WOA will empower, and then that would be a strong statement, I think.
Okay, that's interesting. That's really Pia. I'm going to take Pia's one. So Pia, you've got mobilizing women for vibrant, healthy, and inclusive communities. So Pia, you've gone right to the very end and taken the final statement. Can you explain your rationale, Pia?
Sure, I haven't quite gone to the end because I took about the mobilizing. So they had earlier on, it talked about trying to see to our end, we will mobilize. So we took the mobilizing bit from the beginning and tried to lay the egg. So I tried to have the chicken's not very visible, but the laying of the egg very visible.
So you kind of almost have a thing, the vision of WOA is to mobilize women to have vibrant, healthy and inclusive communities. So we've got a chicken and we've got an egg. I think you've got a few people agreeing with you on that one. This is a typical piece of writing that you see in proposals all the time. Is what we do is we take the reader through the gears about how we're going to deliver the eventual outcome. Whereas what Pia's doing is taking the eventual intended outcome and putting it first. And then if you do that, you can have a considerable difference in terms of the amount of words that you need, because you probably don't need to explain all the lead up stuff. So Pia, can you rephrase that again for us?
Repeat it again?
Yeah, your chosen chicken and egg.
So I said mobilizing women for vibrant, healthy and inclusive communities. So it was trying to take the fact that it was supporting women, it was taking the mobilizing the resources and then jumping to the end. So it's trying to condense it.
Yeah. Right. What we're going to play around with now, we're not going to do this as groups, let's do this individually where we sit. We're going to take that statement, and so folks, grab a pen, grab a piece of paper, and we're going to take that statement and put it at the front. And here's a little challenge, starting with the statement, can we rewrite this passage and reduce the word count? Oh, thank you so much, Ellie. Right, you've taken, so you put that as your opening line. Now, how much of the other 89 words are needed? So let's give ourselves 5 minutes just to see whether we can skin this a bit. Time's up, folks, time's up. We had 25 as our first attempt, our first scoring. That was Jenny. Anybody got it slightly less than 25?
Yeah, I think that I had 11.
11?
Yeah.
Oh, wow, Isaac, let's hear your 11. Now, if we were physically together, I'd be having a big box of chocolates, including, because I love bounties, a big box of chocolates with the award. Unfortunately, virtually it's a bit of a challenge. So to get the award, you've got to have the fewest amount of words, but still retain essentially the same meaning. So no pressure. Isaac, do you want to share your 11 words?
Yeah, so I did empowering women for a healthy and inclusive society without any threats.
Whoa. That's really succinct. How do other people feel about that? Jenny, your version at 25 is, do you feel that Isaac might have skinned it a bit too much?
Oh, I've taken into account the title. That's included in my word count.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Mobilizing women for vibrant communities, yeah. Yeah, I've done that, yeah.
Okay. Sorry, do you want me to read it? Or?
Yours, yeah.
Okay, so mobilising women for vibrant, healthy, inclusive communities by empowering them with skills and information to provide opportunities and material resources to advance women's rights and equality.
Oh, not bad. Rose, you've got your hand up?
Hi, so mine is we will mobilize and empower women for vibrant, health and inclusive communities that respects women's rights.
Whoa.
Yep.
Ellie, you're our convener and communication specialist. How I'm going to hand over the judgment. Kay, stick to you. What do you feel?
I liked Rose's, I think.
Do you think anything in this original that's now being taken out, that we've lost something by Rose's one?
Do you mind repeating it again, Rose? Sorry.
So I said, mobilize and empower women for vibrant, health, and inclusive communities that respect women's rights.
Read mine out as well.
Yeah, Amina, yeah.
So I've got mobilizing women with skills, information, sustainable livelihood opportunities, and opportunities for vibrant, healthy, and inclusive communities.
Well, and that must have been about 24, 25.
Not up to.
Wow. Barakat, you have your hand up.
My approach would be, like, at the end of the day, what you're going to achieve is that you want them to have a full potential. So the way I would go for it is WOA will support women fulfill their full potential by empowering them with the skill, information, and sustainable opportunities. Like, I'm putting this active voice in terms of, you know, making really sure that's still about 26 words.
Wow, this is amazing, guys. I really appreciate, I'm conscious of time, we've hit 2 o'clock GMT. Really appreciate the headspace you put into this. Quickly, let's just think about writing. Whenever you're writing, so if you produce anything like this that has been produced here, and write in the way you feel comfortable, find your ultimate chicken and egg. Because our writing is always leading up to a chicken walking up the path, shaking its bottom and then laying an egg. Find your chicken and your egg, the ultimate product of what you're saying. Put it at the start. So click and drag it from the end to the start, and then only write that which is necessary to explain the chicken and the egg. And you will, I think all the examples we've got have cut this word count down nearly by 75%. So it's a really good bulletproof technique to be really efficient with your writing. Find your chicken and your egg, put it at the start, and then only write what is necessary to justify that bit. And you should be able to provide the sort of stuff that people can use on your behalf and hit those word counts. So I hope you found it useful, guys. We have notes for this session, so I'll be sending those across to Ellie and Barakat, which capture the thoughts. So you don't have to write anything, they'll all be written down. And what I hope I've done today is give you an idea of, have those 15 questions as your score sheet, content, and then stylistically think about the discipline of active voice over passive voice, and it should give you a shortcut to short work counts. So thank you very much, guys. Thanks very much for engaging, taking part. I hope you walk away with some value. Ellie, I don't know what you want to do in terms of closing down, but I'm more than happy to stay on for a few moments if people want to pump my brain a bit more questions. And I'm kind of nervously sitting and twitching to realize whether I've given Nikki something new.
You have.
What have I given Nikki?
You've made me think. You made me think, because I'm no good at cutting down word count, but I have the most amazing CEO who is Angelin, and she does this brilliantly, and she works as my peer reviewer as well. So I properly got it. So
Really?
yeah, properly got that active voice of just that chicken and egg example. Absolutely spot on. Thank you for that.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks. I think something I've learned over the years, I write in English, and I think the global funding world is not English. It's an international version of English, which is kind of heavily dominated by American English. And English can be very passive. Whereas I think international English, and certainly American English, is much more direct.
We're just too old, Bill. That's the trouble.
Yeah.
But that's ageist. How you can, Pierre? You can't nod to that. That's ageist. I'm telling Lynn.
I'm just going to jump in here. Sorry, just in case people need to jump off. I know, Bill, you said you'd stay on for a few minutes longer, so I think if people do have questions, that's brilliant. But just to let everyone know that this is our final session of kind of themes and ideas for the Network Forum, but we would be really grateful if you wanted to join us for the closing session in about half an hour's time. where we'll just kind of distill down what we've learned over the last 4 days, and talk about where we go from here, and what the future might look like. So thank you everyone for attending this session, and yeah, I'll keep it open for a little bit longer if you've got questions for Bill.
You've done a great job, CSC. You really have. Thank you for doing this for us.
Excellent. Thank you. Yeah, I think on the language thing, we work a lot in East Africa, and I think Swahili is a very passive language, and particularly Tanzanian Swahili. So you often find that is quite a big translation work from that language into funding language.
Absolutely. Well, thanks a lot, Bill. I'm going to
Back
back out now. Take care. Bye.
Any questions, guys? More than happy to field anything.
We had a couple in the chat. I don't know if Nazir is still online.
I was looking through a few of them. Yeah. Do you want to put a few out there, Ellie, and I'll see if I can bounce them on my nose.
Yeah. So one that I think is quite important for a few different organisations for working with street connected children is, how do you explain direct versus indirect beneficiaries, particularly when you're looking at maybe an advocacy project, which might run a lot more long term, and you might not be able to give those immediate numbers for, say, if you were giving out food parcels?
Oh, and I think advocacy particularly, I mean, we do a lot of work with advocacy, and one of our main clients is the Advocacy Accelerator based in Nairobi. So grappling with the issue of advocacy all the time. I mean, I think you need to be honest about you might have a small number of direct beneficiaries. So if you're working with a small group of advocates, you're dealing with a small number of people and organizations, but the impact through those sort of people indirectly in terms of legal change, society or attitudes, is really, really quite dramatic. The problem is, how do you capture the exact numbers, and how do you capture the real impact of it? Because that impact is so long down the line from your intervention that you may not be able to track it. And that's where we struggle, I think, a lot, is we can talk a lot about engaging large numbers of advocates, but as direct participants on our programs, trying to capture the impact of those advocates in their various ways, numerically and qualitatively, is a real challenge. And that's not about presentation, that's about your tracking systems on impact. But where you can track indirect, but please put them in, because there are so many things with a small number of direct beneficiaries, but huge indirect beneficiaries. That's probably a bit more of a bloodletting than an answer. I think there was one about concept notes and proposals.
Yep, Jenny's got her hand up.
Yeah, Jenny?
Yeah, I find it really hard to find. Are there any templates for like short-term impacts? Because what we do is very short-term, so it's very hard to explain to funders why they should fund for us and not somebody who's like got ongoing projects.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, that's an issue for us in fundraising training, because we have things like short-term impact, which is what change do we make from this workshop? It's very difficult to capture that, and what change ultimately will you raise more money, which is probably the big impact. I mean, do you deal with things like lead indicators and proxy indicators?
I don't even know what that is.
Oh, right. No, this is quite at the end of the intervention, and I'm going to try and do it imperfectly in a minute. You should be able to track some change. And that change should be seen as a lead indicator of the eventual outcome and impact. So, for example, when it comes to fundraising training, we know that a change in people's confidence and attitude is a lead indicator to improved practice that leads to improved money.
Okay.
So we try and measure change in attitude.
So it's confidence and attitude, which is perfect for what we do. Yeah.
And we track that at point of intervention. The thing is, you've got to have the proof that confidence and impact does lead to change.
But how are you measuring it? I don't get how you show or how you measure it.
Well, one of the things in terms of the measurement we tend to do longitudinal stuff, so go back to people several months later to see where there's been a change. huge issues about attribution. You know, did they raise more money because of our training, or was it because there was a lucky donor? So, but we do that by sampling. So we don't take that everybody, because we've got hundreds of people that go on our training courses. We just take a sample of people and then go back to them a few months later to see whether there has been any change.
Okay.
So, and then we, in the discussion, relate that to confidence shift at the time of the intervention.
Okay.
But yeah, so we can't cover everybody. We can, over a period of time, cover reasonable proportion.
Okay.
So proxy indicator, lead indicator, something which is deliverable at the end of the intervention that is linked to the ultimate outcome.
Okay. It's very technical.
I mean, I did a really big program with actually youth homelessness in London. So it was, you know, in some way connected with street connected children, and we found that the causal factors of young people becoming homeless in London were low self-esteem, vulnerable housing, poor, disrupted family environment. There are a number of indicators that had nothing to do with homelessness. But if you had those factors in place, then the likelihood that someone would be homeless was really high. One intervention wasn't targeted at homelessness because our group weren't homeless. They were targeted at the risk factors that led to homelessness. As a result of quite a considerable amount of research. So that's a classic proxy indicator that your intervention is around self-esteem.
Yeah.
Which is linked to eventual homelessness.
Great. Thank you.
Any other questions out there?
Yeah, so there's Nazir's question, which you picked up before, which was, what is the difference between a concept paper and a project proposal?
I see a concept note as donor neutral. So when we develop concept notes, I will use 13 out of the 14 questions on this checklist. The only one that I won't put in is how is it relevant to that particular funder's policies, because that changes for each particular funder. So, and if you can produce a concept note that addresses 14 of these questions for every single program you've got, you are fast forward into the funding game, because it's there. So when a funding call arrives, you've just got the one question to adjust. So I would see concept note is 14 of the questions without, I think it's question 6. A proposal has question 6 in it, which is about how is it relevant to the funder.
Makes sense. So Paul has asked a question in the chat. Paul, I don't know if you want to ask it yourself.
Oh goodness, yeah, I can see it's about objectives, outcomes, outputs, activities, impact, goals. I mean, what on earth does this spaghetti of terminology actually mean? And unfortunately, funders aren't always consistent in terms of using those terms. And also the whole thing about theory of change is so many people have different models of theory of change. So we run courses on it. You know, you can get it right or get it wrong. Personally, I would refer to the OECD DAC committee, Development Assistance Committee definitions, and I can send those through as part of the notes for this session. They're not used by every funder, but I think they've got a universality that's greater than a lot of the other terms. And that will be impacts, outcomes, outputs, activities, inputs. So yeah, I will share that, because yeah, that's the reference point we use. Any other ones in there?
Another from Paul, just about sustainability always being the question asked, even on a short-term project. And how can you demonstrate this realistically when working with street children?
Yeah, this has become a kind of pet subject of mine. So I go to funder conferences, and I will ask the question of the funder. You always put it on an application form. What is sustainability? What's the ideal answer? And most of the funders that I've ever seen on a panel would say, "Oh, I guess you're applying to these people." So they often see sustainability as doing the carousel of different grant makers. However, I think that is changing now, and people are looking increasingly for business solutions, viable economic solutions as sustainability. Although we have to be really realistic about how much of civil society work is ever going to be a commercial product. And I think in some ways the social enterpriseization, the commercialization of our solutions is over exaggerated, but that is often seen as a model. Do we have answers to it? I think I've got a few answers in the pack I'll send to you, because there isn't one straight answer. And actually, if I'm being honest, I don't think the funders know what is a good answer anyway. Any other questions in here before we, can I do my final poll? Am I allowed to do my final? Well, a smaller group, so it's not like for like, but it'll give us some idea.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. My numbers are back, guys. So this is how we started. Can you do the same again and capture which number now represents your attitude to that funding bid that we talked about? So you have your 4 days competitive environment. Are you a 3, which is still don't want to go there, or have you moved to a 4, which is positively sort of enthusiastic but not over the moon about it? So let's have a little look to see if we move people forward. I've got a 1 in there. I've got 1-1 so far from Isaac. It might be the majority of people here are oh, we're coming in now. Brilliant. While scores are coming in, Isaac, were you a 1 to start off with, or has your number changed?
Yeah, I feel like, yeah, the first one I was 4, but now I'm 1.
Wow. From this session, what moved you from 4 to 1?
Yeah, I feel like the first time that I selected 1 because that I was very inquisitive to know what it entails, but now through your presentation, I know what the proposal seeks to have, or the ingredient that needs to be in the proposal. So now I'm excited because whichever the topics, I can use the same questions to answer them. Yeah. So
that framework is giving you a kind of template now. You can replicate that.
Yeah.
Getting a lot of 4s and 1s, isn't it? It's really interesting. So Donald's another 1. So I think in this limited sample, I'm delighted. Thank you very much indeed. The money will be in the post to you. So, and of course, the postal system won't work, but my intention was there. Thanks. Some way, I suppose we can capture the chat will be recorded, Ellie, so we can do this scoring.
Yeah, and I've got a capture of it here, so I can email it on.
So I mean, I'm still happy. What is it? I can give it 3 more minutes, and then so if you've got a final question, speak now or forever hold your peace. An alternative, we'll have a break and you can finish the conference off, and I might get a bit of lunch.
No, I just have one more question about, nowadays, a lot of online fundraising is now, in practice. The online fundraising is now much in practice than writing proposals, and they think, that's much more larger networking, and it is easy also to raise for some networking, which is very strong. What is, some of the organizations are not ready for that, but we are traditionally working on the proposal, working with the organizations, and that's the difference between those two. But the present trend is online fundraising, using lots of videos. And
so you're saying, all right, so that is about carrying your message through social media. I mean, I see that as a very effective mechanism for organizations of scale. and organizations of broad reputation. I think with a lot of the people that we work through, they are small scale organizations. They haven't got huge resources and brands across their country. So they have to build their clan. And I think this is quite an important point, and it's another course we do, is about the first thing you should do is you should build your family around you. And for whole loads of anthropological reasons, your family won't be bigger than 150 people. So what you need to do is identify the 150 most valuable contacts you've got and work through them. And then that will multiply your impact. If you're trying to work directly with the world, I think it's very hard. So I mean, I sit this down, I've got this in my own business, and I've got clients that I've got a wonderful spreadsheet with my 150 most valuable friends of the business. And I rinse them. Paul Berricat will realize he's on the receiving end of some of this at the moment, because, and I realize for various reasons, I can't manage 170. I can't manage 250. I can manage 150. And if I'm only managing 75, I'm not managing my maximum. So do think about your clan and how you communicate with the clan, and then out through the clan into the outside world. Does that make sense, Paul?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and there's a lot of research into why it's 150. It's something to do with the structure of our social brains.
That's true.
Any final calls?
A bit more of a technical one from Kelvin in the chat on writing a proposal is okay to prepare a balance sheet and a spreadsheet.
Kelvin, you think about, I mean, balance sheet, we're talking about technical accounting terms. So that's about a statement of your assets. I don't know if I'd put that into a proposal. I think one of the things I think that's come up from what we were talking about earlier is and the experience that you had, is you need to take the reader through bite-sized experiences. So they need to have something that they can make a decision on in 15 minutes, take you to the next stage, and then get into degrees of complexity. So I think a balance sheet might be a kind of third order thing to look at, not a first order thing. And then I presume when you're saying a spreadsheet, you're meaning a budget and a cash flow within a spreadsheet. Again, probably second or third order. But you experience that in the thing. What are people going to look at in 15 minutes? If you can't grab them in 15 minutes, they're not going to read the rest.
I have just one more question.
Yeah.
If I can.
Sure.
You know, today we talk about this corporate social responsibility.
Yeah.
You know, I can speak about in India. You know, we have big corporates having their own foundations, but you know, to attract them, it's a cumbersome proposal and cumbersome process to get through to get their grants. So it's not so easy, not straightforward as some of those good organizations who have straightforward formulas, but these are very cumbersome, competitive. They said you give the best competitive, innovative project and we will support. But that's very difficult to imagine, because the way that we work with street kids, you know, to match their expectation is not so easy. What is your take about that?
Whether it's a corporate foundation in India, whether it's a Dropbox foundation in the US, whether it's Comic Relief, whether it's Bill and Melinda Gates, whether it's Mackenzie Scott, very, very small portion of money is decided by competitive open funding calls. The real money is decided by building relationships, people getting to know you, and then inviting you to apply with all the other rats. But if your whole thing is about trying to reach people like in competitive environment with lots of other people to open funding calls, you will really struggle. Well, and I think it's, I mean, we work all over the world with every type of funder. Fundraising is relational. There are a few exceptions, but the vast majority is about relationships that precede the actual ask. So yeah, and I know that's the same game within the corporate environment within India, and I guess you know it too.
Yeah.
Shall we part?
So I think we need to hold it there because we're about to set up for our final meeting. But thank you so much, Bill. That's been really interesting. I feel like I've learned a lot, so I hope other people have as well.
Well, it's a delight to work with you guys. Obviously, we're working with you at CSC directly. Lovely to meet the network. You know, and having, in fact, some organisations I kind of recognise the name because I've seen them appear in not only CSC stuff but within the list of funders we work with. So I wish you all well, and I hope you found it valuable.
Thank you so much, Bill. Very helpful. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Cheers, guys. Enjoy your weekend.
See you. Thank you very much.
Amina, have we made you less scared? I have to ask Amina, especially now you've got your camera on.
I've moved to a 4. I feel much better. Yes.
Oh, amazing. So what moved you from a 3 to a 4?
I think I like the chicken and the egg and your explanations and the samples that you shared. So that really helped. But I know it takes a lot more practice to get it right. But I realize that sometimes we tend to write too much and we should actually, you know, just condense everything, but still get the message out. So.
Which part of the world are you working in?
Kano, Nigeria.
Oh, okay. Yeah. It's it's learning techniques to prune the words is invaluable, I think.
Yeah.
I wish you well, and thank you so much. I can enjoy my weekend knowing that I've done something. So,
yeah. Thank you.
Taking a bit of your life.
Thank you. Bye bye.